it's that time once again for Insane in the Fembrain.
Insane in the
Fembrain.
I really have been enjoying doing this podcast, Insane in the Fembrain. I love both. I love doing Insane in the Membrane and Fembrain. Thank you again to everybody for your lovely messages. Thank you for liking and subscribing and telling your friends. Please do keep doing that. Tell your friends and tell them to like and subscribe, and then that pushes us up the charts. That gets people noticing, and that gets people listening to what we're doing. And that's why we do it. We want people to hear what we're talking about. Because the jumping off point is mental health, but we don't sit and chat, directly about mental health. What it is, we tell our stories, and from that, people can pick out what they like and pick out the bits of interest to them. I think it's basically showing people that all these thoughts and feelings that they have, they're not alone. We all probably feel and think very similarly. So that's why we do this. This week I was joined by Dani St James. Now, Dani St James is a trans woman. I'd never had a proper conversation with somebody who was trans before. I've worked with people who are trans, and I when I was a bus driver way back in sort of mid-90s, one of the mechanics, Lynn, who was trans, and Lynn was very open. She'd sit and talk to us, have a cup of tea, and she'd always tell us about her journey and how she what happened, how she got to be, where how she went from Alan to Lynn, but I didn't really get into it with her because you don't want to look like a fool, you don't want to upset anybody, and you worry about upsetting people. So that's I didn't really get into it. But with Dani, I just thought, right, let's get her on and let's have a chat, because with all of these conversations, the reason I have them is because I have questions and I don't know how to ask them, so I just go, fuck it, I'm just going to ask them. I'm not out to offend. I think that comes across. People can tell that my intent is pure. I'm not out to upset or offend anybody. I'm just interested, and I want to know how it feels. So how would it feel? How does it feel to like that? The sort of like you feel like you're in the wrong body, and there's all these different thoughts and feelings going on. I didn't know. So it was good. Dani agreed to come on and have that chat, and she was brilliant. So here's Dani St James. I know trans people, and I've gigged with trans people. I've never actually sat and spoken to someone who's trans. So I thought you would be the perfect person to sit and have a conversation with.
Oh God, no pressure then.
No pressure at all. It's all on your shoulders.
It's all on my shoulders.
Solve it all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to solve everything right now.
Yeah, because I think the only times that you and I have met has been like late night, isn't it?
Yes, it's always late night. We've had a few wines, or it's at Soho Theatre and whatever else. And Jade's in the background heckling.
Oh my God, she's an absolute angel. Sorry,
she is, isn't she? Oh, hang on, Dani. What did you say?
I said, wine, is it, Dani? Oh, no, nowadays, it's not wine, is it?
It's not.
Aren't you sober?
I'm sober now. Yeah, I'm sober now.
Right,
so I'm coming up 6 months.
Amazing. How do you feel?
Do you know, it's tricky, because when people ask normally, how do you feel after this period of time, I think they expect you to be like, oh my God, I get out of bed 4 a.m. every morning. I'm the most productive I've ever been in my life. The only thing that I really noticed was a definite decrease in how anxious I felt all the time. And I also feel like I've gained an extra 24 hours a week.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's probably actually realistic, because I used to spend so much time prepping and planning for going out, and then at least half a day following feeling like absolute shit. So it's probably I've probably gained all this time, but it's good.
Yeah, we've been drinking more indoors because we've been locked in, but ordinarily Jade and I we'll drink when we're out socialising, but we don't sit in the pub, or we don't actively go, let's go and have a pint. It's just always connected to our work.
Jade's turned into a bit of a mixologist during lockdown, hasn't she?
Well, yes. Well, this is it, you see, because Jade loves food and drink, but not in a like, oh, I get it, I want to get it all inside me. She's interested in how making it, and that's how she gets. That's where she gets her joy from. Is that cooking and discovering and creating cocktails and things like that. So it's more about it's more like it's tapping into the artistic side of it rather than just let's have a sandwich.
I mean, you really did land on your feet with her, didn't you?
I really did land on my feet.
She's just making all of these brilliant foods and drinks, and you're just lapping it up.
I know. I've definitely. Well, I thought I'd put on weight, but I got into a pair of jeans I've not got into for a little while the other day. So,
oh my God,
I don't know what's going on.
Good for you. I mean, I've definitely put on a Corona belly, but I'm just embracing it now. Fuck it.
Well, I think that's it. Innit? That's it. We need to change society, not us change for society. They need to embrace our curves, man.
Totally.
Not all this. Exactly, size zero bullshit going on. No one's a size zero and happy and well.
And pick your battles. Like if I'm going to spend all of this time worrying about what I eat, like it's just that there's enough going on in the world that I can't be demonizing myself for eating sweets. So I'm just getting on with it now.
Exactly. So that's 6 months ago. So because you're out in Clubland, aren't you? And
kind of, yeah. So I am. I mean. I think a lot of the way that I drank came. I was a nightclub manager for years. That's kind of how I met everybody. Yeah. I ran clubs all over London, and then when I left working in clubs, that's going back about 4 years ago now. I just continued on the club habits, and then with that, it just kind of got worse and worse and worse to the point where I kind of got to the end of last year, and it was just such a negative thing for me. So then, I got into the 12-step program right at the end. It's kind of like the end of December, beginning of January. And so, it's been good. I'm enjoying it. My boyfriend's 15 years sober, so that's really helped me to have that kind of reference point of somebody who's done it for so long. And
was he able to sort of help you with it? Yeah,
for sure. Just his way of thinking about it was helpful to have around. I don't think I would have been able to do it if I was with somebody that was a heavy drinker or a heavy user.
No.
But when you look around at kind of pillars within nightlife in London, you look at Jodie Harsh, Fat Tony, they're all sober. Everybody is, but they're kind of just the puppeteers of the club scene, but they're just able to remember it all, which is brilliant.
Yeah. I suppose, you get that Pavlovian response when you're in those environments, I guess.
Yeah.
You feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get it. It's like with comedy, I got to a point, I'm having another pint at a gig, and it's like, and it's all to do with nerves, I realised, and so that's how I sort of, it wasn't a problem, but it was enough to make me start thinking about it,
Sure.
So. Yeah, I didn't have to do the 12 steps, but I made steps not to have pints at gigs and just sort of cut down a little bit. How did you find the 12 steps? Because I did SLAR, the Sex and Love Addicts.
Oh, it's so interesting that you would mention that, because I've been looking into starting SLAR as well. Not because of my current behaviours, but I definitely have recognised within the programme, I've recognised former behaviours that I had. So I was kind of toying with the idea of looking at meeting for that as well. Not sure. The 12 steps, it's... I don't feel qualified to give an in-depth thing on it because it's only been 6 months. And to be honest, I've kind of dipped in and out of it as well. I'll go a month and a half without doing a meeting, and then I'll do 3 in a week. And I picked up quite quickly that it wasn't going to be something where, for a lot of people, it's kind of like they swap one addictive behaviour for another, and the one that they replace it with is meetings.
Yes.
And I saw there was people in some of the meetings that I was going to, and they were going to, without exaggerating, they were going to 12 meetings a week, which is 12 hours out of your week in meetings. Yes. So that for me, I didn't feel like I required that level of support. But I found it all really positive. I haven't been working through the 12 steps in terms of getting to the redemption and the sponsorship and the passing on. So I've just been kind of enjoying my own entry into it, and it's just been a time where I really recognised so many things that went wrong over the years because of problems that I had with drinking and getting on it.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's the getting on it. It wasn't so much just sitting and drinking. It's the party atmosphere, the socialising. That's what I love.
Yeah.
And and then when it gets to a point, it's all the time.
And
Yeah.
the main reason that I knew that I had to kind of get help and stop, I was getting really, really bad blackouts of time. So I could just have honestly 2 glasses of wine, and the following day I wouldn't be able to tell you how I got home, who I'd spoken to, what we'd spoken about, just no memory of it. So
Oh wow.
I knew, and as well, it got to a point, especially last year, where I was waking up and not only did I not remember it, but other people remembered me, and it wasn't in a positive way. I'd done stuff that was just not great. It was kind of like I used to be the person where you drop me into the middle of the party, and I was like a spinning top. You'd kind of bounce around the whole night, and I wouldn't have been out with one group of people. I would have been out with everyone because I was just bouncing around, and that coupled with a kind of a load of arrogance that came with like substance abuse, and I just became a right shit, to be honest, Rich. Like I just became really shit when I was fucked. So it's actually been the perfect year as well to get sober, because there's no social pressure to drink at the moment.
That's it. Yeah, it's perfect in some respects. I totally get what you mean about that sort of being a liability when you get to a level. I know I've been guilty of that. I know everyone's had a moment but when it's every time, and I totally relate to that.
And when I told people, I said, I'm getting help because I feel like I've got a drinking problem. I had a lot of imposter syndrome with it initially, because I wasn't the person that was pouring Baileys all over cornflakes. But if I'd have let it continue, I probably would have got to that point. And I kind of, when people say to me now, like, oh, you weren't even that bad, it's like, well, how bad did I have to get for you to recognize that it was a problem? Because it was definitely a problem for me. So and just the anxiety I would feel leading up to drinking, knowing I would probably do something bad, it's just gone. It feels so much better.
Yeah. That's half the thing, isn't it? It's the anxieties, and you drink and do whatever to get rid of that anxiety, because especially when you'll have a line or something or a pill, and suddenly all those anxieties go, and you feel elated. You're like, oh, all the knots in my stomach have gone. Of course, I should do this all the time
for sure.
And then you come back down, and then you've added to it. Yeah, it's my goodness, that turmoil.
When I used to get booked for a club thing, I used to fill a protein shaker with about a third tequila, and then I'd top it up with lemonade, and I'd put a bump of MDMA in it, and I would drink that on the tube to get to the club.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, I was honestly, I was mental. I was not okay.
I mean, there's no way once I'd had MDMA, I'd go, oh yeah, I'll just go about my day. That's the day written off.
Yeah. I'm not saying
that's gone.
No, that wasn't in the morning. That was to go to a nightclub. Yeah. So like,
I see. I thought you was on the way to work.
Oh my God, could you imagine? No. No. Oh God, that would have been a real problem. No, if I was booked for hosting, I used to get booked at clubs all over the place to host. So I put it all over social media and be like, I'll get you guest list, come to this club and I'll be there and all of that. And I would drop into a nightclub and I'd just be a bloody riot. It would be within an hour I'd have most of my clothes off and be walking down on top of the bar, So, in order for me to get into that frame of mind, it was like dropping a Molotov cocktail into my liver.
Yeah. And your boyfriend's been 15 years sober. I mean, what did he make of it all when you were in the eye of the storm? He must have just been.
I don't think he saw the extent of it ever, because.
Oh really?
Yeah, because he runs before all of this, he ran security on nightclubs, so he was working in the night. So he would. The only experience he had of me, coming towards the end of my party days, was he would see The Hangover. Because he'd be out working and I'd be at the club, at a much different club. His experience was mainly the boozy mouth, miserable person that would wake up on a Sunday.
Yeah, he just get what was left.
Yeah, he'd get the shell. The shell of the person that was left after the party. Yeah.
And where did you meet him?
So I am in 2015. I ran a nightclub. This is funny, actually. I ran a nightclub in the middle of Chelsea, so all posh people, and it was a cowboy themed nightclub called the Beaver Lodge. And
Wow.
So I ran this club in Chelsea. I was the general manager, and the company that owned it owned also an 80s themed nightclub up the road called Maggie's, which is quite a well-known 80s club. And at the time, my boyfriend was the head doorman on that club, and because it was the same company, there was a lot of crossover. So we met about 5 years ago, and then, now but it kind of disappeared, and now we've been properly together for about 8.5 months.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah, he's
wicked. That sounds great.
Yeah, he's fab.
It's like when you're with someone that's quite, it's like with Jade, like, because Jade's larger than life. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this before. We've talked about this. We've been having couples therapy, and it only we love each other. That's not the issue. It's just that other factors come in and kind of fuck it up a little bit.
Sure.
And we, you take your shit out on each other, and now we're trying to work out why. But I've started to learn that you can't. One of you has to kind of be. I don't know. I think you just sort of flip flop between who's the more kind of supportive. And then who's the one that's the larger than life character, and it kind of flip flops between the two.
Yeah, my therapist says it's the gardener and the flower, and you can switch between the two. It's you're either being the gardener or you're being the flower.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that.
Like one of them is
exactly how. Yeah,
one of them is on display, and one of them's doing the work, but you can kind of alternate with that.
Yes, fucking hell. See, always learning. That's amazing. This is why I reckon everybody should go to therapy at some people. There's that stigma attached to therapy where people think you have to go because there's something's not right. But sometimes you just need to go and talk to someone and have someone put it in that framework like that, like you've just done.
Absolutely,
and suddenly you've got this clarity.
And there's so many different variations of therapy. I've been through a couple of different types. So I've been through gender therapy, and my therapist now deals specifically in kind of like trauma, grief, and that sort of stuff. And then just gender. But to find him, I had to go through like a variation where they knew they were comfortable with trans people, because I didn't want to go to any therapist that would always pinpoint all of my problems to the fact that I'm trans. So I had to go to a therapist that could kind of separate that and go like, okay, you're trans, but that doesn't take away the fact that you went through something, you know?
Yes. I see again that, of course, even though they're therapists, they're sometimes their own beliefs and feelings and kind of can. Oh my God, totally. Of course, like human beings.
Nobody is without bias, you know. And and I think if I didn't live in London and I was in, I don't know, Scunthorpe, and I went to my GP and I said I need to see a therapist, and they went and gave me this basic therapist in Scunthorpe. That person would at some point probably judge an issue that I was having and think that the root of it was gender, solely because they didn't understand gender therapy. So it was, you know how that, and it's kind of like finding the right pair of jeans. You know, you can try on a load of different pairs and they're not going to work, and then you find the one and you stick with it, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Do you know what? That's brilliant. I hadn't really thought of it that way. Yeah, of course, it makes complete sense.
I also really wanted a gay therapist. I had to find a gay therapist because I find gay people way more relatable. I don't think I could really take advice from like Sharon. You know, like I had to find a nice little lovely gay guy, which I did.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, it makes complete sense again. When did you start the gender therapy? When did all that begin? So this thing, I've met people who are trans. I've had drinks with them. We've gigged together. I used to work with Lynn, who was a mechanic when I was a bus driver.
Oh God!
And she was one of them. And she was a trans. Yeah, so she was in that world. And this was in like the sort of mid-90s. So the conversations hadn't really started. They certainly hadn't started in the in the public forum.
Yeah, we're
Still
going
very
through an
much,
interesting turning point now, because I think even that very brief description you gave of Lynn, that was it kind of the epitome of what a trans person was allowed to be in the 90s. You know, that was the vision that you had of trans people. Whereas now we've reached this turning point where all of a sudden we're realizing that, oh, trans people are teachers and they're doctors and they make they work in pizzerias and they work in pharmacies. You know, like the spectrum of what you see as a trans person now has really opened up, and that comes from, even though I'm not a fan of her, that comes from having conversations about Caitlyn Jenner and having conversations about all of these kind of trans narratives opens it up. I think we're at a similar point now that we were in the very, very early 2000s when Queer as Folk was on Channel 4.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden, we as a country recognised that gay men weren't all Graham Norton, Dale Winton, and Paul O'Grady.
They were,
They weren't these kind of sexless, campy men. They were actually just men. And
that's it.
That opened up a conversation 20 years ago. And now we've reached a point where all of a sudden we're going, oh, not all trans people are Dave, who is 53, and she has now become Sarah. You know, like we've reached a point where all of a sudden we're exposed to it. So it's a great point. I mean, my own kind of entry into gender care, gender therapy. I started when I was about 17. So we're going back, like 11, 12 years ago. And I actually, the route that I went, it's kind of bad that I'm the benchmark of your first trans conversation, because the way I went about it was completely different.
No, really?
Yeah, I kind of started socially transitioning when I was about 17. And then the day after my 18th birthday, I moved to Ibiza. And about 3 months into being in Ibiza, I went to a doctor there, and he just wrote down the prescription drugs that I needed, went to the pharmacy, I bought them, and that was it, which is definitely not the right way to go about things. In the UK, you face waiting times of up to 2-3 years before you even get assessed.
Really?
Yeah.
What you have to? Is it you have to? Because my godson is transitioning.
Okay.
And that I am aware of. They were saying she has to wait for 2 years, live as a woman or whatever, whatever that means. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so it's all that sort of thing, and then they start the process.
Oh my goodness!
You've shown that you're serious about.
Yeah, the UK is really underfunded as well in terms of like getting people. I think it's a blessing and a curse for people in the UK with the waiting list. Obviously, it's really hard for people who have to do that waiting time. But it also gives people time to really find their feet within themselves. And
yes.
So the standard protocol here, if you were to do it all in the UK, you'd go to your GP. Your GP would write a referral letter to your local gender care clinic. The waiting list time averages out now between 2 and 3 years. And then you get that letter 2 years later. They call you in. You get assessed by a gender psychologist. Then they would sign you off. They would send a letter back to your GP, who then prescribes you hormones. And that's when your journey begins with the medical transition. So where I'd skipped all of that because I did it all in Spain, kind of dodgy, really. I mean, they didn't even check my bloods. It was just a case of here's the estrogen and here's the medication you need to stop producing testosterone. Off you go. And so I did that. But I mean, to be honest, that was probably the pills that I was taking in Ibiza. That was the least one to worry about. And so,
really?
Oh God, I was a fucking nightmare. Yeah, I was a podium dancer in Ibiza. Popping estrogen was nothing.
Wow.
I was busy. I was busy on all the disco biscuits.
Of course, which could have anything in them. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, I was all over the place. And so then when I moved back to the UK, I moved straight to London. And went to a GP, signed up, walked in, and I basically said to him, look, I've been on this medication for the last 2 years. And he said, well, it would be more detrimental for you now to go on to the waiting time to get to the gender clinic and come off this medication. He's like, so I'm going to prescribe you exactly what you're on, and then we'll get you into a gender care clinic. And they kind of bypassed me on that also. So got into a gender care clinic when I moved to London, which is 8 years ago. And then that's when gender therapy began. So that was a whole different kettle of fish.
Wow, really into it. Really, I mean, what does it? This is. I mean, some of these questions will sound ignorant. They
That's
might
fine.
sound, I don't know, immature. I don't know, because like I say, this is the first time I've really had a conversation about it. I've seen all the fights going on online, and everyone on both sides shouting and screaming at each other that this is the way it is, and this is oppression, and there's no one's really seems to be sitting down and having a conversation about it, so you can get kind of lost in all the fighting. So I apologise in advance if sometimes I'll say, and
honestly, don't apologise. I think the way that I've always viewed it is, even if people say to me things that I know are insensitive, if they're saying, if people ask me or people say it to me, I would much rather you say it to me because I've got thick skin to it, and then I inform you properly, and then you won't need to ask somebody who isn't so thick-skinned, and it would destroy,
Absolutely, yeah.
So I mean, honestly, throw it at me. I don't mind.
Because that's it as well. It's the intent. It's like, I just want to know. I want to know what it feels like. Where, because I've seen some things, and then they were going, and then what, they were, the child was born a man, and then when they were younger, then there was a lot of conversations about mum saying, it was the best day ever when we went shopping for dresses and things like that. And then that made me think, well, is it because dresses and things like that seems more like a societal symbol. Do you know what I mean? Like, women wear this, men wear that, and you're like, but if I made a blouse and a shirt out of the same material, it would be the same thing. So surely it's more than clothing. So what is it? When did you first start to think? Because there's that old stereotype as well. Oh, I felt like I was in the wrong body.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't my experience. The entrapment definitely wasn't my experience. But I think the conversation that surrounds trans kids and how they are treated, it's an argument that will never ever have a black and white answer, because it's so case by case dependent. There are so many kids that experience at some point they can sometimes just say, like, it can be a little boy who goes, oh, I want to wear a dress, and then it just turns out to be a fab gay guy. But there's also a chance that it could be a trans kid, so there's no correct answers, and there's no completely right or wrong way of dealing with kids that have these gender issues. But the healthcare that goes into it, people are terrified. If you look at currently, there's a big argument going on because the Tories Equalities Minister has announced this plan of legislation that she would like to strip all healthcare from people under the age of 18, both mental and physical, for trans people, which is so detrimental, because a lot of the care that's provided for the people that are under the age of 18 is solely therapy. And just having somebody to talk to that's not going to say, you can't do that, that's for boys, or you can't do that. Yeah. And stripping that away from kids is going to, when I was a teenager, no one could tell me if you'd said to me, don't do something, I was going to do it twice and record it. So stripping away healthcare and support for trans young people is going to lead to people buying their hormones on the internet, which you don't know what they are. It's going to lead to self-harm. It's going to lead to, because trans mental health care is one thing, but when it's left untreated, you then develop different strains of anxiety, borderline personality disorder, bipolar, all of these things that will follow from somebody having zero support, and just the detriment that is caused to mental health long term. Whereas if you give kids an ear and a shoulder, and you just tell them that nothing is wrong, whatever they're feeling isn't wrong, it's just we need to work it out a little bit, that's great. But so the Tories are trying to take it away at the minute, which is why there's so much uproar about it.
Right. Well, this is what happens when you get lost in all the arguments and fingers are being pointed and accusations. Because when you first hear about mermaids and Susie Green and everyone's saying, oh, you can't have trans kids. That's against this. No one has said, like you've just said, there's a lot of therapy and there's a lot of talking.
It's all holistic for sure.
You know, I mean, that's it.
If you look at the numbers, so it's interesting that there's so much discussion about trans people because being trans affects 0.3 to 0.7% of the UK population. So
really?
Yeah, so we're talking about the whole of the UK, and between 0.3 and 0.7 of those people have at some point got to reach out for gender-related care. That's a tiny, tiny minority. And then within trans kids, so people are trans that have been treated in any way, both mental and medical, under the age of 18, they've the figures on that is that 1 in 200 of those people treated has recorded thoughts or actions of reversing. And detransitioning. So if you imagine one in 200 of those under 18s regrets it, and of those one in 200, they are only making up 0.3 to 0.7 of the UK population. You think about how much of a tiny, tiny, minute percentage that is, and these kind of radical feminists are really, really honing in on that tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people. But for me, it kind of feels, the analogy that I use for it is to have all of these campaigns that are trying to stop it is like me trying to stop Eskimos from building igloos. Like, that's the tiniest population and it isn't hurting anyone. Like, why are you acknowledging it? I don't hate Eskimos, so why do you hate trans people? Because they're about as relevant to your life when you are a white, cisgendered, female, middle class, conservative woman. We're having zero effect to you. And for the vast majority, trans people are just trying to get by, you know? We're just trying to get by. And there's sorry, I'm probably rattling on a little bit about this. No, you keep rattling. This is exactly what this is for. So there's a narrative that surrounds trans people where we are still in this turning point, and we're years away from equality, and I think we recognise that as a community. The narrative that is often spread is that we are these kind of sexually deviant people, you know, like we're all about sex and that's what it is. But if you strip that back and look at the reasons for that viewpoint, is because it's estimated between 60 and 70% of trans women. I'll focus solely on trans women just because that's what I know. I don't know all that much about trans men, but trans women, between 60 and 70% are estimated to either be current or former sex workers. Now, the reasoning for that is people look at sex work and they automatically think of like sexual deviance. But the reason trans people have to turn to sex work in those great numbers is because of a trans woman who's very early on in her stages of her transition doesn't look passable as female, say.
Right.
And she cannot walk into the vast majority of jobs in the UK. They will not, they will meet her, and whether she's had no surgery, no hormone treatment, her hair hasn't grown out yet, she can't just walk into, say, an office admin job, because realistically, they will laugh her out of there because people don't have the correct view on trans women yet. So along with your transition, is this huge medical and procedure bill that comes with being trans. I'm so lucky that I've been able to afford all of my procedures and surgeries. I've afforded everything out of my own pocket solely through the privilege that I've had as somebody that was able to pass as a born female throughout my life. That was privilege and that was luck. But the amount of, like, I've worked and been in senior roles for the last 10 years. And I've got nothing to show for it other than the way I look. And that's the life that we face, is that so to gain that money, the average trans woman who wasn't able to just go and get a job like I was lucky enough to do, they have to turn to sex work because it's the only thing that is available to them. They can't even go and work in McDonald's most of the time. So they turn to sex work because it gives them the money that they can afford to end up looking a way that they can go and get a job in McDonald's.
Wow. See, something else that doesn't get talked about is the expense.
Oh my goodness. Rich, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. Really? And if you strip it apart, it would blow anybody's mind. And anyone who's not in it would probably see a lot of it as vanity, I guess. But it's like life affirming. If you look at, if I wrote down every amount of money that I spent, there's something to do with just going about my day-to-day life and feeling comfortable. And that's from laser hair removal, fillers, procedures, surgeries. It's basically my life's work. My life's work has gone into just being able to walk down the street. And that's the life that we face. And it's something that doesn't get spoken about. And it should be, because people will then understand that when part of this legislation that Liz Truss, who's the Equalities Minister, is also trying to bring in, is the reinforcement of single-sex spaces that's based on your birth gender. So it would stop me from being able to go to a woman's bathroom if I wasn't passable. I wouldn't be allowed to go into a woman's bathroom if she gets what she wants.
Oh wow!
And
wow. Yeah.
So literally, you work your whole life just to get to a point where you are able to do things that most people can do by birth.
Yeah. And you don't. And that's it. This is not what. None of this is. This is the first time I'm talking about this with anybody. I didn't even realize. It didn't even occur to me. Of course, it takes. It's not just about one day you go, I'm a woman.
Oh God,
or I'm
no.
a man.
I mean, some people do, but they are ridiculed. Like I say, I mean, I've been so lucky. I've had a decently successful modelling career alongside a very good professional career that I'm really proud of. But the only reason for that is been what I was privileged to have to begin with, and what I've been able to afford by being able to pass as something that most people are just born as.
Yeah. Wow. And that's it. What the other thing that seems to be happening, like you say, it's a very small percentage of the population.
Tiny.
Are trans. Yeah, very tiny. But but if you're not aware of it, it's I see some of the arguments and sometimes it's being made to sound like there's this invasion.
Oh my God, yeah, we're like Russian sleeper cells, that we're just going to pop up and steal your kids. We're everywhere.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, and I see a lot of women now standing up and going, no, you're not women. We've worked really hard to get the rights we've got for women against men. And now a lot of them, they seem to be saying, this is what I've read and seen. But they just say, well, it's just men taking away our rights again. And you're like, fucking hell, what the fuck's going on? If as an outsider, you're looking at all sides going, what the fuck? Why aren't we talking a lot more about this? Like, this now has been the most enlightening conversation I've had.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I mean, it's crazy because they don't realise they're saying the work that has been put into them being women. And there are things about being a woman that we will never understand on a first-hand basis. I'll never know what it's like to have a monthly period. I will never carry a child. I won't go through the menopause. Also, funnily enough, those are three things that most people say are the three worst things about being a woman. But you're right, I don't I don't understand it firsthand. However, my whole life has been a fight to get the rights that they have had by birth. So it's just interesting. And the conversations that they have that demonize us as lurkers in the bathroom. If a man wanted to walk into a woman's bathroom and attack her, he would not go to the effort of having breast implants, growing his hair down to the bottom of his back, learning how to do makeup, having all of his body hair removed, getting a whole new wardrobe. If a man was going to attack a woman, he was just going to go and attack her. We are just trying to go to the toilet. Leave us alone.
Exactly. And then what happens is you'll have, as all of these things, you'll have one person that will be the one that, you know, there was that guy he went to prison, but because he identified as a woman, they put him in a woman's prison, and then he attacked women in prison, and that's it. So they go, right, that must be the same for all trans people.
That was fuel on a fire that they had been trying to burn for a very long time. And so, I mean, it happened. It was an exception to a rule. If you look at most trans people that get put into the judicial system, they more often than not end up in segregation and live a life of isolation once they go to crime. Obviously, it's no excuse to crime, but what normally motivates people to do crime is being disadvantaged or in poverty. And unfortunately, again, it's a life that trans people, for the most part, are born into, of being disadvantaged and being the other. So the idea that we're trying to get into women's prisons to have our way with them, it's wild.
And it's having for want of a better word, normal conversations. It's like at the moment with the George Floyd thing and the Black Lives Matter thing, and a lot of white people are now turning to black people and talking about race. And you get to a point, and black people are like, well, we don't always sit around talking about race. You know, we talk about what you talk about. We're people, and
it's funny
the same
because
with this, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's like white people are now turning to black people and saying, how do I fix this problem? However, if black people had been able to fix that problem, they would have definitely done it by now. So it's a white people problem to fix. I mean, black people have done everything from making music to protesting peacefully to protesting violently to making films to, you know, they've had all of this history of trying to change the disadvantage that they've been born into, and yet now white people turn to them and say, "How do I fix this?" But it's not a black people thing to fix.
No, exactly, yeah.
And so,
exactly.
I mean, I definitely don't make any comparison of the trans struggle to the racial struggle, because I think it would definitely be detrimental to us. But there are similarities. The only thing is, I think with us is I'm more than happy to give my time to try and help people to change it right now. And I don't think black people have any obligation to do it, but I want to.
Exactly. That's it. It needs to be more conversations like this, rather than all shouting at each other and pointing fingers and shit like that. And
I think when you allow people to ask you questions and they're not scared, I think that it really is nourishing to a wider picture. Like, for instance, any questions that you ask me today, you're not then gonna, the next time you meet a trans person, say, you're not gonna ask those questions because you already know the answer. You know, you're not just going to keep on asking for an answer that you've already received. So,
exactly.
And that's the benefit of allowing people to question you. I don't do it every day, and it all depends on the setting. If somebody,
of course,
the comments that I had, especially in my younger years, where people were just vile, I would never allow that now, because I can recognize the intent within things. But I'm always so open to having conversations and trying to help people understand stuff.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's the environment as well. It's like when we met, you know, when we've met out and about, you know, I'm not going to turn around and start saying to you, so when did you transition? But it's like, it's because in that environment, it's irrelevant. You're like, your sexuality, your gender is not. That's not why we're hanging out together. It's not a conversation to be had. Then it's like we are people enjoying each other's company. Those conversations are for another time, and it would be weird to start going, oh, so right, you know, just like I say, it makes it. It doesn't normalise it, does it? It means that you've got an issue somewhere. If you're out in those environments and you're asking questions out in that arena.
Oh God, and it happens, you know. It really does happen. Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, I've been at times where I'm literally just trying to go about my day, and somebody will ask me about it, and I feel, oh God, fuck off.
Yeah, I just
you know?
want to go and get some beans. I don't want to.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that I do think that trans people are, we have a bit of an obligation to allow the questions in the right sense. A lot of trans people now, because of different influential figures within our community, if they're asked a question, they jump down somebody's throat and claim transphobia. But realistically,
Yes.
Most people are, majority of people, I would say, are just like all right people. Like, they're fine and they're not going to hate you. However, the vast majority of people don't know trans people, so they don't know what they can ask and what they can't ask.
Yes.
And they don't know the right way to say, you know, like when somebody says, like, when somebody has found out that I'm trans, and they've said, like, oh my God, like, you look so pretty. I didn't even know that you were a boy. Like, and people say it and they don't realize that it's like, oh my God, like, give it a rest. But I'm not going to jump down that person's throat, because what they're saying to me is well intended, and I can control that conversation and say, like, thank you so much. However, next time you say that to a trans person, you might just want to change it, because it might be upsetting towards that person. Because nothing's going to affect me right now. Like, I know who I am. I know I know who my people are, and I know where I'm going. But so jumping down your average person's throat and calling them a transphobe is not only going to be detrimental to that situation, but it's going to be detrimental to every time that person then encounters another trans person, because they are going to be scared, and fear breeds prejudice.
We're looking for a sponsor to help get this brilliant conversation to an even bigger audience. Sponsoring the show, as well as a promotional trailer, means that your message and our message will be inserted into some of Acast's biggest podcast titles. Get on board and partner with Insane in the Fembrain. Go to pauldaniels.tv for more information.
When did it start for you? When did you feel? How does it feel?
For me, it was such a gradual thing. My parents, you've both met my mum. My mum's like amazing, and my parents are both.
She's lovely.
Like, oh, she's wicked, yeah. And they were punks in the 80s and all of that, and they were huge Bowie fans and huge Boy George fans and Prince, and they had all of these figures as kind of idols. So when I was a kid, the kind of androgynous tendencies that I would have were just allowed. There was never a point where it was like, no, you can't have a pram, that's for a girl, or no, you can't wear nail varnish, that's for girls. It was always just like, okay, well, you're just like Bowie. And I was just like Bowie and just like Prince and just like Boy George until I wasn't. And then I was just kind of like me. So, I mean, for me, like, the only thing is, I look back and I recognize that for a really long time, up until I was about 17, I just copied other people because I didn't know how to, I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't know how to be a boy at all. I was just kind of copying people around me. I mean, that even goes to, like, I got tattoos from when I was 14 onwards, and I've got all of the tattoos I've got from that time period are all tattoos that I saw on somebody else that I thought I needed to have in order to be right, because I just didn't know who I was. And then I met a trans girl when I was 16, and that was when everything changed, because I had no point of reference. The only point of reference that I had to somebody when I was a kid was Lily Savage. I had no idea what a trans person was. In the 90s, it wasn't spoken about. The only other person other than Lily Savage who I was, like, obsessed with as a kid was there was this old trans woman that lived in our town. I'm from Wales, lived in this town in Wales. And she was, like we described Lynn, the mechanic. She was like that. Yeah. And she would wear overly feminine clothing, and she rode around on this men's bike, but she'd put those beads on the wheels of it, and everyone laughed. Everyone laughed at her. That's all they did. Everyone just took the piss out of her. And so my experience until reaching 16 of anything that I kind of identified with was either a drag queen on the TV who was laughed at, or this older trans woman on a bike riding around Barry in South Wales who was also laughed at. So
Right, yeah.
rather than try and be like that, I just try to be like anyone else.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's that I see a lot of trans. Like I've said this many times on Insane in the Membrane. My granddad was a transvestite.
Oh, really?
Which I know. Yeah, it was. I only found out about this after he passed away. My dad was telling me, and he had
Fab.
that whole life hidden. It was all hidden, but it wasn't. It wasn't because some people I've seen and they go to the extreme stereotypes or extreme versions of women. So it's fabulous heels and it's tights and it's you know, like things that women probably wouldn't wear.
Oh, women definitely wouldn't wear it. Yeah.
Whereas, and you know,
there's a couple of reasons for that, I think. One thing I was just noticed from what you said, isn't it a shame that we've lost the word transvestite? Because it's definitely not in the vernacular anymore of people, but I love that word.
Yeah. As I said it, I went, I don't even know if that's the right thing anymore.
No, I mean, because transvestite was just men that dressed up as women, whether that be for sex or just because they liked it. And it's kind of seen as a dirty word now. And now we say, like... Now we say that the way somebody dresses would be gender fluid because they would go between dressing male and female. But we've lost that kind of era of being able to say transvestite, which I think is quite sad.
That one word tells you all you need to know, and it's not even a derogatory word. It's not. I didn't say it with any sort of
I don't think
stink
it is.
on it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason for the way that trans women dress in this is two different variations. The reason that people that are in their very early stages or people who transition much later in life, I think the reason that they dress to these hyper feminine, hyper sexualized ideals, kind of similar to, you know, when a teenage girl goes through puberty and they all of a sudden wear crop tops and mini skirts. And it's because they're kind of working out what looks good on them. And teenagers go through this phase where they look either slutty or shit. And trans women go through that, but later on.
Of course.
So you see these trans women who had been male all their lives, had their wives, had their kids, and then obviously the revelation came with their families, and they start at the age of 50, 60, whatever. They go through that phase of trying to work out what they look like, but they do it much later in their life. And as well, because they've had to be masculine for so long because they've been boxed, they go the opposite end of the spectrum, and you see trans people in their 50s, 60s, whenever, or just people who are in their very early stages. I did it when I was 17, 18, but I was still in my teenage years, so it was forgiven. And you just go for the most feminine. I mean, now at my age, you know, like I'm not far off 30, and you would never catch me in a dress now because it's not how I feel comfortable. But that's because I wore dresses when I was 17, 18, and it took me a while of dressing like a slag to realise that I actually prefer wearing jogging bottoms and a vest, you know? Like, it takes a long time to get your own identity.
Yeah, well, it's like Jade. We were talking about this yesterday. You know, Jade was sat in jogging bottoms and a sweatshirt, and you know, and which aren't necessarily, you know, male or female. They just it doesn't have to be that extreme. But like you say, it's because they're figuring it out and finding their own style. And I've seen that when I've been to clubs and I've seen people that are obviously, like, for want of a better word, starting the journey, and so they are there. It wasn't actually in the extreme, like you say, the slaggy stuff. It was quite frumpy. It was all like sort of frills and quite grandma.
Yeah, there is a point as well where the only female influence that they can picture that's got a bit of innocence to it is their mothers. So you see that in late stage transitioners, where they end up dressing like their mums. And their mums were little old ladies.
Yeah, so they've got clutching their pearls and their twins, wearing a twin set and all that. Yeah. I get it. Yeah, but it's that there are people like my granddad. I mean, to be honest, we don't really know if it was just a case of him wanting to wear women's clothing. My dad seems to think that he had a whole other life because there was these 4 guys that turned up to his funeral that no one had seen before, and they were very, very well turned out gentlemen. My dad was telling me, and so my dad was like, maybe he had this whole, maybe he was gay, and he could, but because it was back then, he couldn't admit to it. I'm not just saying that just because he used to wear women's clothing.
No, but there
was probably a lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of something that's got so many different variations. But there also was a point where it was so shameful to be gay that men would separate themselves to go and have sex with a man. They would both dress up as women because then it wasn't them having the sex, it was a woman having the sex that they were having, and then they would just go back to their normal lives with their wives, which was kind of a strain of transvestism, I guess. Which is where you would see the old fellas in the plastic wigs and the mini dresses, and they'd be off to les it up, I guess.
But it's a big leap from I enjoy wearing what's seen as women's clothing to feeling that your body isn't how you would like it, and you want to make that change. I mean, how did that feel to go, this isn't how I should be. I should be something else. How did that? What does that feel like? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, thankfully, I didn't box anything again. For me, my main experience of needing to change, of having to change my body and having to go through these medical changes was, we're all different depending on what it was. For instance, with body hair, I was born, unfortunately, I was naturally very hairy. I'm not anymore because of the amount of laser that I've had done. But
really?
That for me was shame. It was drenched in shame around having body hair. It was so shameful to me that I had to get rid of it. When I grew from hormones over the course of a few years, I ended up with quite good sized boobs, but I just knew that my image required massive bloody tits, Rich. So, so I went and got myself a lovely big old pair of tits.
Was there a catalogue? You go, I'll have them.
Actually, it's funny. What happened with that is on the run up to my surgery, I decided that when my surgery was going to be about 6 months in advance. And for anyone that would ask, I would say, oh yeah, I'm just going to get very small, very natural implants. And I was convinced that was what I was going to do. I was just going to go up a couple of cup sizes, and that was what I would be happy with. And then it came down to it on the day, and you don't decide what size you're going to go to. You tell the surgeon what aesthetic you want to get to. And it got to the day of my surgery, and I had my final consultation, and he said, okay, so last chance now. What sort of look are we going for? And a switch just flipped in my head. And I was with my ex-boyfriend, and I leaned over the desk and I looked him in the eye and I went, get him as big as you can get him. And he did. God bless him. So yeah, I mean, that was just kind of like instinct, I guess. But yeah, I think in terms of the dealing with the body changes and the feeling that is in it, it was all different for me. Some of it was shame, some of it was discomfort. A lot of it was discomfort, actually. I was uncomfortable with the way things were, and I had the chance to change things. And then some of it was just vanity also, like it doesn't, I got big old fake lips too. I didn't need those to look female, but it was what I wanted. So it's all different. Yeah. I mean, there are people who say like, I couldn't even look down in the shower. I had to, I had to do it to save my life. For me, some of the changes that I made. Yeah, I have a very good friend who's post-op gender reassignment, and she said that for the last couple of years before she got her final big surgery, she had really bad personal hygiene issues because she couldn't even wash herself properly.
Couldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And so it was she had to.
It was that bad. It was just, I can't even bear to look at it. Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I'm thankful that some of the issues like that haven't been a reality to me. But again, I think that supportive parents really bloody helped with that, because I never felt shame for my body. I just felt discomfort that I had to change. But I never felt like I had to be one thing until I was ready to decide what I wanted to be, you know?
And how did it feel the day after you'd made that change? Did you feel a sense of relief, or have you? Because I don't know if have you had the full op?
I haven't had full gender reassignment. No. You can ask. That's fine.
Right.
That's fine. Yeah. No, I haven't had it. The older I get,
it's definitely on my cards. It definitely is on my cards. And that's through a growing discomfort. But if you'd have asked me 5 years ago, I probably would have said to you, oh, I think I'm just not going to bother. You know, I was just happy with what the changes that I'd made. However, now I'm pushing on, I'm coming up to 30. I think I would struggle if I hadn't had it done by the time I was 35. It's definitely coming for me. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't have any attachment to the way that my body is now. And I'm really sick of bloody like tucking and being restricted with my clothing. And there is a growing discomfort of that area of my body that I will change at some point. You know, and thankfully we live in a country where my healthcare would support that.
Yes.
The NHS does wonderful things.
Yeah, it does. And that's why they should be looking after it. Yeah, I just, there's that assumption as well that, I didn't. Everyone's had the full op. Everyone's done everything. Everyone's done this, and there's so many layers.
Mm-hmm. There really are.
And people,
a lot of people don't go through with it. You know, like I know trans women that are in their 60s and 70s that haven't had the full that haven't had gender reassignment. And I know, I have friends that had it done the day of their 16th birthday. I've got friends all over the spectrum of it, and as with pretty much everything in my life, everything has been gradual to me, and this gradual discomfort that's come in the last few years, I'll just resolve that at some point, and I won't make a big bloody song and dance of it. I'll just go off, get the surgery done, and move on with my life. You know, When I had my boobs done, I didn't tell anyone that I was going to get it. Well, my friends knew, like my close friends knew, and my family knew. But I didn't tell anybody apart from that. And I just thought, it's nobody's fucking business, you know?
No, that's it, isn't it? It's,
Yeah.
And it's that, and I think that's where people struggle, isn't it? Because they go, well, how can she be a woman? She's got a penis. You go, well, there's more to it than that. It's not there's other things around that. And that's,
there's balls too.
So
no, but I mean, the thing is with that though is like, nobody knows. Like if I, without me taking my underwear off, literally nobody knows what is going on with my body. In the same way that I've met you a couple of times. For all I know, you're a trans man, and when you take your underwear off, you've got a vagina. But I have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's part of one of the great mysteries of life is wondering what people look like naked. You don't necessarily have to know. I don't know what most people look like naked. That doesn't mean that I have any entitlement to know what situation is going on in their knickers. It's none of my business.
It did, but that was the thing. Like I said to you before, when we've met and been out together drinking, and it didn't even occur to me like that gender and anything. I was like, this is my mate Dani. I'm like, hello, Dani. It wasn't. I didn't even go, oh, what's her story? You know, it didn't even occur to me. It wasn't until later on, until talking to Jade, and Jade was telling me about you, and I went, really? Oh. Okay, it didn't. It wasn't a thing. It just wasn't a thing. It's like with Lynn at the bus garage. I didn't know about Lynn until Lynn was having a cup of tea with me, and she started to tell me her story. Yeah. And I'm like, oh wow! It didn't even occur to me.
I think that there's a really good value in trans women that will tell you everything about themselves, but you don't know that they're trans. For me, like when I meet somebody, say if it's in a professional environment or a personal one, if somebody says to me like, "Oh, tell me about yourself," I'm automatically going to tell you that I'm Welsh, probably a bit about my work history, probably tell you where I live, what I've been up to. I'll probably throw in a comment about my boyfriend. Like I would tell you all of these different things. And probably the ninth thing that I'm going to say to you, and oh, by the way, I'm trans, because it's a part of who I am. It's not my full identity now. And unfortunately, a lot of trans people now, especially with the way that social media and the media in general is you ask them who they are, and they say like, my name, like I'm trans. Oh, and my name is. It's the first thing that comes out of their mouth. And that's a blessing and a curse, because they open a conversation, but they also start a conversation with trans stuff. And I think a real thing that we should be working towards now is having conversations about who we are and trans being a part of it, rather than us being trans and our personal lives only being a part of that.
Well, that's it. Like I said to you before, when we first met and we've sat and had a drink and stuff like that, we were just people having a drink. It wasn't, we are, you go, oh yeah, I've got my boyfriend's this and I do this for a living, and it was like talking. We're people first. It's all the I don't sit there. I didn't walk up to you and go, hello, yeah, I'm Jade's boyfriend. Got a penis. He just didn't. It's not the way. He just wouldn't do it.
You said hello. I've got a penis, and I'm Jade's boyfriend.
I just got it out. There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Didn't you dip it into my drink?
Because that's what blokes do. That's all we do. We are animals. We just go around, going around putting our dicks in drinks. I hope we get to a point where things are a bit more level-headed on both sides, where we can have more conversations like this rather than feeling like we can't ask questions because for fear of being made to feel you're being a turf or you're anti this or you're anti that. Because I'm not anti anything. I want everybody to get along, and some people say, "Oh, that's because you're too nice," and you're like, "Well, just the world is a beautiful place, and it's fucking mad that we're here in the first place."
Yeah.
So shouldn't we be helping each other, especially now when you've got a virus that could easily have wiped us all out?
Yeah.
It's very fragile. The human beings are a very fragile species, it turns out. So surely we should be doing more to lift each other up.
I think it's worse when you look at it all online too. I heard statistics the other day that only 20% of the world has Twitter, right? And and of the 20% of the world that uses Twitter, 80% of the content is produced by 5% of its users.
Wow.
So when you log into things like Instagram, like Twitter and all of these things, which is where most of us get our information from, it is being 80% of what we look at is being made up of 5% of 20%.
Wow.
So just that the world is better than we think. We're just getting it all shoved in our fucking faces. Yeah.
You know what? You're so right. And I think as much as I love social media, we do need to have a point.
My friend Jackie the other day, she was saying to me, she was like, God, I just feel so anxious. I'm so stressed out and all of that. I'm like, but you're not working. Why are you so stressed? She's like, I just feel like everything's going to shit and all of that. And I'm like, do you know why it is? It's because you're spending all your time on Instagram. Like,
yes.
Nobody thinks that you're a shit person for taking time off of Instagram. So just start taking time away from it. Last week, I took Instagram off of my phone for the first 4 days of the week, and I felt so much more relaxed. So that's what I do. I just start deleting the apps and only downloading them when I have something positive to add to them, because sitting there and absorbing the energy that is coming from anger on both sides, like it's doing nothing for us and it's not helping.
No, exactly. And then it's just, and like we said, it's making people that aren't on sort of in the middle, just looking at this thing kicking off, going, oh, fuck this, I can't be bothered with this. I've got my own shit to fucking worry about.
Yeah.
And so again, that's where the conversation stops. Yeah. Oh, fuck. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's fucking does my head in. Well, again, I should come away from it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
I know. And Dani, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
It's been really cool. Where can we find you, funnily enough, talking about social media? Are you on anywhere that you would like people to follow you on, or would you rather not?
I'm mainly Instagram. I'm Dani St James, Dani with one N, St James like the park.
Lovely.
My old tagline used to be St James like the park and just as easy to get into, but I'm not going to say that anymore.
Produced by Paul Daniels at pauldaniels.tv.